I am Madison, 27, stumbling along the gravel shoulder of Highway I-95 with my 2-year-old Liam clinging to my chest. Semi-trucks are blasting past us, shaking the ground, and I am terrified, but I keep walking. Then, tires screech. My father's black SUV slams into park right in front of me. He jumps out, face pale with rage, looking at the empty road behind me. "Madison, where is your car?" he shouts over the traffic. I look him in the eye and finally speak the truth. "Austin took my keys. He says I am medically unfit to drive." Watching the world go by in this quiet moment with my coffee, I'm struck by how life can shift from peace to a total storm. Where are you joining from, and what is your favorite drink right now? I look forward to your comments. Now, let's return to that heavy, suffocating silence inside my father's SUV. The silence inside my father's SUV was suffocating, a stark contrast to the violent roar of the highway we had just abandoned. The air conditioning blasted against my face, drying the salt of sweat on my skin, but doing nothing for the ice-cold knot tightening in my stomach. Liam had fallen asleep instantly in the car seat, lulled by the rhythmic vibration of the engine. I looked at his small, peaceful face and felt my hands start to shake as the adrenaline began its slow, brutal crash. My father did not look at me. His eyes were fixed on the road ahead, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were bone white. He wasn't asking as a father right now. He was asking as the retired high court judge he used to be, cross-examining a key witness. "How long, Madison?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "6 months, I whispered, the words feeling like shards of glass in my throat. Since Liam turned 18 months old, I saw my father take a sharp, jagged breath, but I did not cry. I did not ask for a tissue or a hug. Sadness was a luxury I had liquidated months ago. Instead, I reached into the bottom of Liam's diaper bag, shoving aside the wipes and spare onesies until my fingers hit the cool, metallic edge of an old tablet. It was an outdated device Austin assumed was broken, tucked away in a mountain of baby gear he never bothered to touch. It was my secret back door into my own life. While they spent months telling me my brain was broken, I had been quietly auditing the damage. I didn't use my hospital email that would be a breach of protocol. Instead, I logged into an old, encrypted personal account I'd set up years ago and never shared with him, using it to reroute every bank alert and password reset. My fingers moved across the screen with clinical precision. I was not just resetting passwords for my retirement fund and my private insurance. I was reclaiming my sovereignty. Anger was not a scream this time. It was a line-item veto. For years, I had been the silent investor in Austin and Stephanie's version of a perfect family, but I was finally checking the balance sheet. I realized then that my love had not been a bond. It had been a high-interest subscription, and they had overdrafted my compassion until I was bankrupt. "What are you doing?" my father asked, glancing at the glowing screen in my lap. "Accounting, Dad," I replied, my voice steadier than it had been in a year. "This is not a breakdown. It is a foreclosure." I hit confirm on the final password change, and the tablet glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of cold facts and lethal numbers. I am not running away. I am going back to take delivery of what belongs to me. I needed him to understand the mechanics of the trap. It is the boiling frog, Dad. You know the story. If you drop a frog in boiling water, it jumps out. But if you put it in cool water and turn the heat up slowly, it cooks to death before it realizes it is dying. That was my life for the last 6 months. It did not start with a lock on the door or a raised fist. It started with a casserole. It started with Stephanie showing up at my kitchen island with a bowl of nutritional soup, telling me I looked exhausted and that I should just let her take the night shift with Liam. I was a pediatric nurse working double shifts and coming home to a teething toddler. I was exhausted, so I let her. I thought I was being supported. I did not realize I was being occupied. This is the trap of normalized cruelty. They use performative care as a Trojan horse to breach your boundaries. First, Stephanie was in my kitchen every morning, criticizing the nutritional value of the oatmeal I made. Then, she was checking my grocery receipts, circling items she thought were wasteful. When I complained, Austin did not defend me. He looked at me with that clinical pity and told me I was being ungrateful. He said I had postpartum anxiety and medical issues that made me irrational. Then came the watch. Austin presented it as a gift, a high-end smartwatch to monitor my heart rate and sleep patterns. He said he was worried about my health. But the heart rate monitor was just a front for the position tracking software he used to monitor my location 24 hours a day. The spending alerts he set up were just a way to ensure every cent of my salary went exactly where he wanted it. My life became a series of push notifications and data points on his tablet. My father's jaw tightened as I spoke. He asked if a doctor ever confirmed any of these diagnoses. I told him the only doctor in that house was Austin's ego. Every night, Austin would read my texts under the guise of making sure I was not doom scrolling, claiming it was bad for my mental health. But I knew the truth. He was reading my thoughts, isolating me from my friends, and ensuring I had no one left to call. I knew people would ask why I did not just leave sooner, why I did not scream for help when the water started to simmer, but they do not understand the invisible chain of a survivor. You do not yank against the chain when you are being held hostage. That just chokes you harder. I was not staying because I was weak or because I believed their lies. I was staying as a watchman. I was picking the lock while they were sleeping. I was waiting for the exact second when I could walk out with Liam and know that they could never, ever touch him again. The light in my father's eyes changed. He was not just hearing a story. He was witnessing the tactical map of a war I had been fighting alone. I told him that my silence had not been submission. It had been the sound of me gathering ammunition. Today, the water finally reached a boil, and I was the one who turned off the stove. The tires of my father's SUV crunched on the pristine gravel of the driveway at the Oaks. The estate was a silent fortress of beige stucco and wrought iron, a place designed to look perfect from the street while rot grew within the walls. My father killed the engine, but neither of us moved for a long moment. Through the windshield, I saw them. Austin and Stephanie were on the patio, looking like a scene from an architectural magazine. Stephanie was laughing, swirling a glass of white wine, while Austin sat with his tablet, looking exactly like the successful financial advisor he pretended to be. They looked like people who had not just forced a mother and a 2-year-old child to walk miles on the shoulder of a dangerous highway. "Stay here," my father said, his voice low and heavy. I ignored him. I unbuckled Liam's car seat, my fingers working the straps with a quiet, trembling efficiency, and pulled my son into my arms. I was not staying behind. I walked up the driveway behind my father, matching his heavy stride. Stephanie spotted us first. Her practiced smile did not drop. It just froze into a brittle mask of concern. "Oh, look who's back," she called out, her voice bright and hollow. And she brought reinforcements. "Douglas, you are just in time for a glass of Chardonnay." My father did not look at the wine. He looked at Austin, his gaze as cold and immovable as a mountain. "Where are her keys and her passport?" he asked. His voice was the low, dangerous rumble he used to use on the bench when he caught a lawyer lying to the court. Austin stood up, smoothing his expensive polo shirt, trying to match my father's height, but failing miserably. "Douglas, let us not be dramatic," he said, his tone oozing practiced condescension. "We were worried about her. Madison has been very unstable lately. You know how new moms get postpartum anxiety can make them so scattered? We took the keys for her own safety. We are just protecting her." The casual misogyny made my skin crawl, but I did not break. I did not give them the emotional reaction they were baiting me for. I stepped out from behind my father's broad shoulders. "I am not unstable, Austin. I am leaving," I said. Stephanie let out a short, sharp bark of a laugh. "Leaving? Where are you going to go, Madison? You do not have a job, you do not have a car, you barely have a brain cell left that is not focused on diapers. We are the ones keeping this family together, because you are clearly incapable of doing it yourself." My father stepped between us, his presence a physical barrier of justice. "You are not protecting her. You are holding her hostage, he said, his voice low and terrifyingly steady. Give her the keys and the documents. Now. No, Austin said, crossing his arms and jutting out his chin. You are just a retired judge, Douglas. In this house, I make the rules. I am the law here. If she wants to leave, she can walk. But she is not taking my son anywhere. If she tries, I will call the police and have her committed for a 72-hour mental health evaluation. I have been keeping a diary of her erratic behavior for months. I will make sure she never sees that boy again. He leaned in, his voice a low hiss. I've already spoken to Dr. Miller. He's willing to sign an affidavit stating you're a danger to yourself. One call, and I'll have you on a 72-hour psychiatric hold before you can even find a lawyer. The villain's escalation was complete. They were not just stealing my life anymore. They were threatening to erase my motherhood. But Austin was so focused on the rules he thought he controlled that he did not realize I had already finished the total audit of his crimes. My father did not use violence. He stood in the center of that grand foyer like a silent statue of justice, cold and completely unyielding. He did not shout. He simply recited the law with the same low rumble he used to command a courtroom. He reminded Austin that withholding personal property and restricting a person's movement constituted unlawful restraint. He looked at Stephanie and told her that if she lied to a 911 dispatcher about a custody dispute to incite a police response, she would be facing charges for filing a false report. I ran past Austin, dodging his outstretched hand as he tried to grab my shoulder. I raced up the stairs, my heart pounding a jagged, frantic rhythm against my ribs. The house did not feel like a home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. I tore open the closet door and began shoving clothes into a duffel bag with a frantic speed. Liam's onesies, my clinical scrubs, my jeans, anything I could reach. My breath hitched in my throat, but I kept moving. I went straight for the mattress. Stephanie was always too busy inspecting the dust on my baseboards to ever check what was hidden beneath the bed frame. I pulled out the thick manila folder I had been building for months. It contained photos of Austin's bank statements I had snapped when he left his laptop open, and screenshots of texts between him and his mother, discussing how to manage me. I was not just surviving, I was gathering ammunition. My father remained a statue in the doorway, his back to me, acting as a physical barrier between me and the people who had slowly dismantled my life. He told me later that he had seen the light going out in my eyes 6 months ago, but he had mistakenly thought he was respecting my boundaries by giving me space. He realized now he had left me behind enemy lines without a weapon. As I reached the bottom of the stairs with my son in my arms, I did not look at the kitchen where I had cried over burnt toast. I did not look at Austin's disbelief. I walked straight to the patio table and dropped a single sheet of paper in front of Stephanie. My SUV, I said, my voice clinical and devoid of the instability they had tried to label me with. The $25,000 vehicle my father bought me when Liam was born. You sold it 3 weeks ago, didn't you, Austin? He had manipulated me into signing a joint title months ago, using the word "or" between our names, which legally allowed him to liquidate the asset without my secondary signature. The bill of sale was dated the day after he took my keys. He did not sell it for the family. He sold a gift given to his wife to pay off a credit card that belonged to Stephanie. This was the reality of their classy life. It was the illusion of power from an empty wallet. Stephanie's business had collapsed, and they were using my assets and my credit to maintain a facade of wealth they no longer possessed. They were parasites who thought they could bankrupt me to keep themselves afloat. Their position was not earned. It was a luxury they had been overdrafting from my life for years. I walked out the front door and into the blinding afternoon sun. The air out here did not taste like their perfume and manipulative lies. It tasted like oxygen. I got into my father's SUV, and as we crunched over the pristine gravel driveway, I did not look back. The look of shock on Austin's face as we pulled out of the Oaks was not nearly enough for me. I did not want a head start. I wanted accountability. Back at my father's house, I sat at the sturdy oak kitchen table and opened the laptop I had retrieved from my duffel bag. I was not looking for digital memories or family photos. I was logging in to the cloud-based security system Austin had installed to keep me under his thumb. Austin thought those high-definition cameras and sensitive microphones were his eyes and ears, his tools for the ultimate surveillance. He did not realize that when you build a panopticon to monitor your wife, you are also unknowingly recording your own criminal confession. I clicked through the archived footage from 2 weeks ago, my fingers steady and clinical. Anger was not loud this time. It was a balance sheet. I found the timestamp. In the footage, Austin and Stephanie are sitting in his home office, surrounded by the leather-bound books and expensive scotch they use to project an image of stability. They were not talking about my medical instability or their concern for my mental health. They were talking about a signature, my signature. She will never even look at the paperwork, Austin says on the tape, his voice as casual as if he were discussing the weather. I have already forged her name on the loan documents. The $85,000 from the private lender has already been transferred to your business account, Mom. He had exploited our shared DocuSign account, using my saved digital signature to bypass the in-person notary requirement with a private lender who was a business associate of his, someone who didn't care about the legality, only the interest rate. I watched Stephanie nod, the brittle mask of motherly concern replaced by the cold calculation of a predator. And the trust fund? She asks. The $120,000 her grandmother left for the boy's education? It has already been liquidated to cover the interest on your bridge loan, Austin replies with a smirk. By exploiting his status as the sole trustee and presenting a forged medical letter claiming I was mentally incapacitated, he managed to bypass the bank's oversight for an emergency hardship withdrawal. Madison is too scattered with the baby to notice a missing account. By the time she figures it out, we will have the firm back on its feet. I hit pause on the video, his smirking face frozen on the screen. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon a single ounce of regret for the man I had married, but there was only clarity. This was not a breakdown of a marriage. It was a felony fraud investigation. I had been the silent investor in their version of family, and now I was pulling my capital. I looked over at my father, who was standing by the window, his expression a mask of judicial frost. I realized then that if Douglas had not been there to pull me off that gravel shoulder, the world would have been a very different place. Without him, Austin would have finished his game. I would have been a financial ghost, buried under $85,000 of debt I never signed for, and my son would have been a pawn in a bankruptcy case he could never win. They would have finished cooking the frog until there was nothing left but bones. That is the kill shot. Dad, I said, my voice factual and lethal. He built a cage to watch me, but he actually built the evidence locker for his own trial. I was not just surviving anymore. Inside, my laptop glowed with the only kind of sunrise that mattered, the kind made of cold numbers and undeniable retribution. Austin and Stephanie did not wait long. They arrived at my father's house an hour later, their imported sedan sliding to a halt, with a desperation that mirrored my own 3 months ago. Through the living room window, I watched them climb out. Austin was still in his polo shirt, but he looked frayed, his face a mask of sweating arrogance. Stephanie was clutching her phone like a weapon, already shouting before she even reached the porch. I did not hide in the back room. I did not pull Liam away from the window. I walked to the front door and opened it before they could even knock. My father stood right behind me, a silent, towering presence that acted as a legal and physical firewall. "Give me my son, Madison," Austin barked, trying to push his way past the threshold. "You have 5 seconds before I call the police and report a kidnapping. You are unstable, you are high on whatever those pills are that you are taking, and you are not fit to be in the same room as that boy." My father didn't flinch. "Go ahead, Austin, dial it. In this state, without a standing court order for custody, a biological mother taking her child is a civil matter, not kidnapping. But when they arrive, I'll be handing them the evidence of your wire fraud. Choose your next move, very carefully. I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice to match his. I simply held out a heavy manila envelope. You are right about the police, Austin, but wrong about the charges. He grabbed the envelope, his fingers fumbling with the seal. Stephanie leaned in over his shoulder, her eyes darting across the pages. I watched the blood drain from their faces in real time. It was a beautiful, clinical transformation. Inside were the high-resolution stills from the office camera, the transcripts of the recording where they admitted to the $85,000 forged loan, and the digital trail of the $120,000 they had siphoned from Liam's trust fund. This is not a marriage issue anymore, I said, my voice as cold as a surgical blade. This is felony fraud, identity theft, and misappropriation of funds. My father's former colleague is the district attorney, and he has been waiting for a case this airtight for years. Stephanie let out a sound that was not quite a scream and was not quite a sob. It was the sound of a predator realizing it was caught in its own trap. Madison, please, she whimpered, her brittle confidence shattering into 1,000 jagged pieces. We can talk about this. It was for the business. We were going to put it back. The window for talking closed when you took my keys and left me on the side of a highway, I replied. I pulled a second set of documents from behind my back, a unilateral divorce filing and a notarized confession and restitution agreement. You have 5 minutes. Sign every page, or this entire file goes to the prosecutor's office. I do not want your apologies. I want my son's future back, and I want you out of my sight. Austin looked at my father, then back at me. He looked for a weakness, a flicker of the scattered woman he had spent months creating. He found nothing but a balance sheet that had finally been settled. He sank to his knees on the porch, his hands trembling as he reached for the pen. Stephanie just stood there, her mouth opening and closing in a silence that was finally, blissfully honest. They were not shocked by what they had done. They were only shocked that I had stopped playing the role of the victim. This was not revenge. It was a total liquidation of a toxic debt. I watched them sign away their power, page by page, until there was nothing left of the cage they had built for me but the ink on the paper. 3 months later, I locked the door to my own apartment. It is not a fortress of stucco and iron, and there are no high-definition cameras hiding in the crown molding. It is a small, quiet space in Savannah, chosen by me, paid for by me, and guarded only by the peace I have fought to reclaim. I have returned to my work as a pediatric nurse, but I do not walk into the hospital feeling scattered or medically unfit anymore. I walk in with the clarity of someone who has seen the mechanics of a trap and survived it. Austin is currently facing trial for multiple counts of felony fraud, identity theft, and the misappropriation of a minor's funds. The digital confession he unknowingly recorded on his own surveillance system became the state's primary evidence. I used the recovered assets, the $120,000, returned to Liam's trust fund, and the restitution from the $85,000 forged loan to establish a new foundation. I named it the Eleanor Support Fund, in honor of my mother, to provide legal and financial resources for women trapped in cycles of medical and financial gaslighting. I have come to realize that real justice is not just about the fire that burns the cage down. It is about what you plant in the ashes. This is the justice of the sower. While Austin and Stephanie spent their lives trying to have the appearance of wealth, I was focused on being someone worthy of Liam's future. By building this fund, I have turned their attempt to bankrupt my soul into a resource that will save hundreds of others. Leaving that life was the hardest thing I have ever done, but I have learned that letting go of toxic bloodlines is not a failure of loyalty. It is an act of self-preservation. We are taught that family is a contract you can never void, but if that contract requires you to stay small, stay silent, and stay controlled, then it was never a contract of love, it was a prison sentence. If you are listening to this and you feel like the heat is rising 1 degree at a time, if you feel like your brain is being broken by people who claim to protect you, please listen to me. You are not scattered. You are not unstable. You are a watchman in your own life. You do not have to yank against the chains and let them choke you. You can wait. You can gather your ammunition in the dark. You can pick the lock while the predators are sleeping. Your worth is not a balance sheet for someone else to audit. You do not need anyone's permission to exist fully, to drive your own car, or to own your own narrative. I watch Liam play on the grass now, and for the first time, I do not look over my shoulder. The only monitor in our lives is the sound of his laughter, and that is more than enough surveillance for me. If you found yourself in this story, remember that you are the architect of your own exit. Do not stay in the cage just because the bars are made of gold. Share this video if you believe every person deserves a life of dignity and true justice.